Hello guys, welcome back to our YouTube channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Ino, Anko and Kurenai? Part 3. If you want more awesome fan fiction like this, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. So without wasting any time, let's get into the video. Kami, this is not good, Jiraiya. Sarutobi Hiruzen murmured as he interlocked his fingers with his elbows resting on the age desk that had been present since the reign of the first Hokage. The Toad Sage nodded in agreement. I know, not only that, but we have a week at best. In the worst case scenario, we have a few days. Itachi was only able to contact and warn me a few days ago. Ami frowned. They are moving faster than I would have thought for an organization that just recently appeared on the radar. Agreed, but that doesn't mean they weren't preparing beforehand for their coming out party onto said radar. Jiraiya pointed out. True. So? Jiraiya gazed at his sensei intently. What's our plan? I've been thinking about it constantly while I was on my way here, and I couldn't think of a way for this to blow over smoothly without exposing Itachi as our spy and keeping the Gaki safe. Sarutobi inhaled a long drag from his pipe before exhaling. On a side note, you should stop smoking, it's incredibly bad for your lungs, you know. Jiraiya noted with a slightly amused expression. Ami barely responded with a grunt before speaking. This is indeed a dangerous situation we're playing in. An idea suddenly popping into Jiraiya's head, the Toad Sage spoke with hope. Perhaps we bring Nara into this conversation. Shikaku can be trusted, right? Sarutobi shook his head. The less people that know, the better. Only you and I will be aware of this situation, perhaps with the addition of one more. Boo. Kakashi hot Aki. Jiraiya frowned. I understand that he's trustworthy, but what's different from bringing him into the conversation? I believe that Shikaku would offer more to the table. Shikaku is a Nara, and he could come up with a more safer and reliable. Ah, that is because you're under the impression that Kakashi would be contributing ideas to the plan. No, my dear wayward student, that is not the case. Sarutobi grinned. Jiraiya's frown deepened as his brows furrowed in confusion. Then what is the purpose of Kakashi being brought in? He is the plan. Now tell me, what do you think of this plan? Jiraiya leaned his large frame forward and paid rapt attention to his sensei's words. His eyes widened at every passing word that exited the Ami's mouth. That could just work. Knocking out two birds with one stone, I suppose. Jiraiya muttered to himself before gazing back at his aged teacher, but that idea, it isn't without its risks. It could affect the Gaki more than you know. Especially because of the fact we don't know if Itachi can go through with it. Even if he does go through with it, we don't know how he would proceed about this. Naruto has an amazing power of will, and the will of fire burns brightly within him. He will be fine. Hiruzen interrupted his student. I don't doubt that, but he isn't an adult. He's just a child. He doesn't have the experience of a hardened shinobi. Hell, even a hardened shinobi would have a difficult time with this. Jiraiya argued back. That may be, but he's been through more than 99% of Konoha. He will be able to handle this. Of this, I am positive. Sarutobi replied with no waver or hesitance. Mark my words, sensei, this will affect him. For better or for worse, we'll see in time. Just ask yourself this. Will it be worth it? Sarutobi sighed and looked up in contemplation. This was a pretty big gamble. He looked at his longtime friend and student. Go, inform Itachi immediately. I'll tell Kakashi what's to happen. Jiraiya grumbled about senile old men losing their minds before reluctantly exiting the office for his assigned task. Like many times before, Sarutobi Hiruzen looked up to the skies and pondered. Ancestors of the Great Leaf, am I doing the right thing? Naruto frowned as he sat cross-legged with Saki-chan in his lap while his hand absent-mindedly petted her head. In front of him was his Taijutsu teacher of nearly half a year now. However, there was no training to be done today. In fact, there seemed to be a change of plans, permanently. Next to his Taijutsu instructor was a man who had spiky silver hair oriented to his left side, dark gray eyes. The man seemed to be in a pleasantly relaxed state, if his weird smiling eye and heavy-lidded expression was anything to go by. Along with the gravity-defying hair was a face mask that covered the majority of his face. The man had only one eye visible, seeing as to how his hit eye was slanted to cover the other viewing orbital. Naruto gazed at the silver-haired man impassively as the cycloptic shinobi returned his gaze with a happy U-shaped eye smile. It was weird, but it was the only way the blonde could describe it. The blue-eyed boy shifted his attention to Guy when the Taijutsu specialist cleared his throat. So my dear youthful student, how is your day today? Naruto narrowed his eyes with suspicion when he noted that Guy-sensei spoke with a nervous tint in his tone. It's going fine, sensei. Aha. Most splendid, my youthful student. Sensei, who is this guy next to you? Why is he here? Naruto interrupted blatantly. No sense of beating around the bush, he had several theories as to why the silver-haired cycloptic jounin was here. Kakashi decided to opt in the conversation to answer instead of his exuberant comrade. Yo. My name is Kakashi Hatake, and I'll be taking over as your sensei starting from today. Naruto's response came without hesitation. No. I sighed, he knew that Naruto wouldn't ease into the situation smoothly. Once he grew attached to something or someone, he was hard-pressed into letting any change into his life that involved his precious attachments, so to speak. To be honest, Guy didn't want to have over his gritty and determined student, but the Hokage ordered otherwise. I frowned, it was strange though, initially, the plan was to have Kakashi become the main instructor, while he himself became more of a side teacher. In addition to that, this plan wasn't to be effective until the summer, which was several months away. So that begged the question. Why did the Hokage abruptly push the plans forward? I shook his head, he would trust in his village leader's decision. Getting back to reality, the man clad in green saw Naruto scowling at him and Kakashi. His silver-haired comrade in the meantime looked bored and happy at the same time. Weird. Hoping that he could diffuse the tension slightly, Guy walked over to the blonde and squatted down to eye level. Ah, my dear youthful student. HMPH. Naruto scowled, like you can call me that anymore. If I heard correctly, and I know I did, you just got rid of me like trash. Naruto shouted. Saki barked in agreement, she didn't really know what was going on, but if her blonde was upset at people, then she too would be upset at people. I suddenly started crying out waterfalls as Naruto folded his arms across his chest defiantly, his little over-dramatic act will take no effect on him. Nope, not today. My student. I have failed you. Just know this, I never wanted this. Blame the silver-haired man. Guy wailed as he pointed a furious finger at Kakashi. Then why would you let him take me? He briefly looked at the silver-haired man now identified as Kakashi. I'm still not training with you before turning back to Guy, if you really didn't want to, you could prevent it. Actually you know what, I'll talk to Gigi right freaking now. Kakashi decided now was the time to interject. Do you even wish to be a shinobi? Drawled out Kakashi in a bored fashion. Naruto turned a glare to the silver-haired man, why does it matter to you? I repeat, do you wish to be a shinobi? Kakashi asked again, only this time his tone of voice that of a stern one. The whiskered boy maintained the same glare as he answered, of course I want to be a shinobi, why else would I stay in the academy? The blonde child scoffed before continuing in a rather scathing tone, you think I go to a shinobi academy because I like being bullied and ignored by the teachers. Kakashi internally winced, but he had to straighten Naruto out now, then listen boy, you will be training underneath my tutelage. This is on direct orders from the Hokage himself. If you truly and seriously aspire to be a shinobi, you don't question the leader of your village, understand? Naruto gritted his teeth, he knew the man was right, but that didn't mean he had to like it. The blue-eyed Jinchuriki stood up, whatever. But as he went to stand, he had briefly caught a glimpse of his Taijutsu instructor's face to see that it was eerily impassive, with a hint of disappointment at him. Why the hell does he disappointed in me? Naruto seethed internally as he walked away with Saki-chan trailing loyally behind him. His gaze softened as he looked back at his puppy looking at him with eagerness. He picked her up and nuzzled against her affectionately, well Saki-chan, look like it's you and me for now. As he neared the exit of the training ground he'd been asked to meet his sensei in, he hinged into a familiar woman who was dressed in all black for what seemed to be a funeral or mourning service. He needed to vent to someone, and he didn't feel like talking to anyone who could reprimand him. He walked the path that he's seen Sakura-chan and Ino-chan take many times before. Ino blew out a bored breath as she manned the register while her parents were on lunch. She swung her legs aimlessly as she spun slowly upon the rotating seat of the stool. She was humming a light tune when she heard the doorbell ring, signifying a person had just opened the door. Hi. Welcome to Yamanaka Flower Shop. The stop you can get everything flower related to. Ino suddenly gasped, in the midst of her routine greeting, she had finally identified the person and realized it was someone who was familiar with her late sensei, Yui-sensei. Yui looked startled, as if she wasn't expecting anyone to recognize her. Yui quickly schooled her features and returned a small sad smile, hello Ino-chan, how have you been? The 10-year-old Yamanaka era suddenly let loose every detail of her life for the past 2 weeks and how lame the academy's new teachers were. Ino didn't even register the slight wince of the elder female occupant of her family store at the mention of the academy teachers, after all, she hasn't seen Yui-sensei since well, her other sensei's death, and Yui-sensei was a well-loved teacher at the academy. It was only natural for a natural gossip girl like Ino to blabber incessantly about random things carelessly. After all, she was just a 10-year-old girl. Although she was only 10, even she wasn't insensitive to a person's feeling. She realized that several minutes into her non-stop chatter, she had mentioned Iruka-sensei proxy the topic of the academy. She quickly ceased her words and began sputtering out an apology in a panicked fashion. It was widely known that Yui-sensei and Iruka-sensei had been close intimately. Oh my kami. I'm so sorry sensei. I didn't mean to. Gomenasai Yui-sensei. Ino frantically rushed out. Ino-chan, it's okay. Actually, I was on my way to see Iruka-sensei now. Slom. Ino screamed as someone shoved Yui violently into the ground. The figure then headed towards her and hovered around her form protectively. Ino's terrified scream shifted into a relieved sigh before she angrily pushed the person who shoveled her academy teacher. Daddy? Why did you push Yui-sensei? Ino interrogated as she headed over to her teacher. Ino. Stop, be quiet and get back here. Inoichi spoke within a tone that resonated authority as he narrowed his eyes at the form of Yui picking herself up. Daddy, what's wrong? The clan heiress froze in place as she heard the tone of voice of her father. Instead of answering her, the Yamanaka clan head pierced the woman in front of him with a glare. Who are you? Inoichi interrogated. Yui dusted herself off and spoke in a calm voice. What are you talking about? Your daughter knows who I am, isn't that right, Ino-chan? Before his daughter could nod in affirmation, Inoichi spoke in a hard voice. Do not play games with me. Yui Hadoka left the village weeks ago after the death of one Yamino-er. Wouldn't be good to reveal the death of a Konoha shinobi certain circumstances. Shock displaying on both Yui's and Ino's face, Inoichi decided to take their stunned moment to activate his clan jutsu. Placing his hand in his signature clan hand sign, he held it up and aimed at a slightly bewildered. Shintenshin no jutsu, mind transfer jutsu. Inoichi smirked. Jutsu success. He briefly thought as his conscience was pulled towards the pseudo-Yui. Ino groaned as she rushed forward to try and somewhat successfully support her father's falling form. You better hurry up, daddy. Inoichi groaned. Usually the process of entering someone's mind was a fluid and smooth transition, but going into this now known obvious impostor was all but that. The reason the Yamanaka clan head knew this was an impostor was because Inoichi had interviewed quite a number of shinobis via his family jutsu, and Yui Hadoka was one of the shinobi that had fallen under his routine checks. The Yamanaka clan leader managed to gather enough of his bearings to finally note his environment. Drip. Inoichi frowned as he felt a drop of liquid splat against his cheek. The long-haired pale blonde man cautiously moved forward at a sedate pace. After all, a mind could be the single most dangerous tool a person could possess, and from the looks of it, this mind felt ominous and oppressive. This was most definitely not a normal mind. Drip. As a Konoha shinobi and an XT&I, torture and interrogation head, he had a duty to find out if this impostor could or would pose a danger to Konoha as a whole. So with great caution, Inoichi pressed forward. Drip. Nearly half an hour of walking around, Inoichi began theorizing a suspicion about his whereabouts. He had heard that Jinchurikis had a crazy mindscape and that normal applications of mind and body invasive jutsus would not work and wasn't advised to be used against demon containers. Feeling a bit worried now, Inoichi was thinking about cutting his losses and exiting. After a few moments, the clan leader believed this to be mindscape of their own Jinchuriki, one Naru. Welcome Ninjin. Inoichi paled. He turned around from where he came from with great trepidation. He was sure that's where the seemingly ancient voice came from, but how could that be? He had just came from that direction. A deep and menacing voice chuckled. Silly Ninjin, if I do not wish to be found, I will not be found. The clan leader of the Yamanakas found himself sweating as his gaze fell upon a giant barred cell. Behind the colossal metal barring glowed two giant murderous red eyes. The elder blonde stepped back fearfully as the Kai, killer intent, rolled off the being inside the bar in droves. Please, I do not wish for any trouble. Quiet Ninjin. The ancient entity snarled. You had acquired trouble the moment you used your blasphemous technique. Inoichi found himself unable to talk as the Kai intensified exponentially. Stepping out of the shadows, the owner of the powerful and feral voice revealed itself to be what Inoichi feared to be. The infamous QP no Kitsune. I grow bored of you Ninjin. Leave or I shall do what I did to your ancestors when they foolishly interacted with my presence. The QP spoke in a lazy fashion. Inoichi ignored the jab at his ancestors and nodded immediately. The clan leader went to leave before he paused. He realized he had no idea on how to get out. If he knew how to get out, he would have gotten out sooner when he had an inkling as to what he had gotten himself into. He turned to ask the malevolent chakra entity only to flinch violently as the QB roared with loudness that rivaled a crowd of a trillion. The furious roar propelled him out of the mindscape abruptly. The QB smirked viciously. Soon the nations will be reminded of the prowess and presence of the greatest of tailed beasts. Inoichi sat upright abruptly and gasped as he woke up in his own body. He immediately patted himself in a reassuring manner, hoping that nothing was out of place or anything of that sort. He looked around for his daughter and saw that she was now tending to a young blonde boy, and he narrowed his eyes. Uzumaki Naruto. The aforementioned child groaned as he regained consciousness. Ugh, where the hell am I, and who the hell are you Ino-chan? Naruto nearly yelped as he realized his head was in Ino's lap. Oh geez. I'm sorry Ino. I didn't even know what happened. One moment I'm buying flowers and the next thing I know is that I'm waking up with my head in your lap. Naruto blabbered speedily in fear of getting hit. Naruto. It's fine. Ino giggled, besides, you look cute when you sleep. Naruto's face burned as he sputtered his response, thank you. I also think, that you're also. Inoichi decided to intervene now. Demon container or not, no one was going to be putting the moves on his daughter if he could help it. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto's attention shifted straight away from the heiress of the Yamanaka clan to the leader of said clan. His eyes widened as he realized he wasn't in his henge of Yui-chan. A barely visible tremble only noticed by Inoichi indicated that he was in a slight state of fear. Naruto's azure eyes fearfully darted around as he tried to pinpoint a way to avoid the situation. Inoichi's gaze softened at the sight of an obviously scared boy that was thrown into a situation that wasn't his fault. He sighed, Naruto-san, may I ask you why you were hinged into another person? Impersonation is a crime that can be punished harshly by authority. Ino looked fear-stricken as she let out a startled cry, Daddy. You can't get Naruto in trouble. Inoichi gave his daughter a stern look and spoke in a voice that left no room for argument, Ino-chan, to your room, now. The clan heiress gave Naruto a sympathetic and apologetic look, I'm sorry Naruto, I'll make this up to you later. With a slight glare directed at her father, Ino flipped her hair and let out a slightly haughty HMPH. Before obeying his order and heading out the back door of the shop. Naruto didn't even register her words as his slight tremble became more obvious. Was Ino's dad going to hurt him now that Ino was gone? So caught up in his fear, he didn't even think to use any jutsus to escape his predicament. He just froze. Naruto felt the frustration of being helpless build up as his chest shuddered more heavily. It's okay Naruto-san, I do not wish to hurt you. I would just like to know why you impersonated a fellow Konoha resident. Inoichi spoke with a soft gaze and voice to try and get his honest intent across. To show that the boy was not in danger. Inoichi's attempt at reassurance seemed to have worked since the boy's tense and frightened state subdued into a relaxed state. Inoichi offered a small smile, would you like some food Naruto? He purposefully addressed him by his first name only. This served to establish a familiarity that would hopefully lull the boy into a more trustful state. And no thank you Inoichi-sama. Naruto managed to squeak out. Inoichi couldn't help but chuckle at the politeness the blonde child showed under the duress of what the scared child considered to be a predicament. No need to address me so formally here Naruto-san. In the home of our compound shop it will always be safe. Naruto chose to respond with a small nod before a small frown made its way onto his face. An internal conflict began as curiosity and his natural instinct to survive clashed. Should he run for it? Should he stay? His inner struggle must have showed on his face, seeing that Inoichi gestured for him to sit on the stool. I promise on the namesake of my clan that I will not hurt or harm you, I also know that curiosity is an annoying thing, so you may ask your question if you choose to, that is. Naruto slowly walked over to the gestured stool facing Inoichi the whole time. Once fully situated on the stool, Naruto played with his hands idly as he averted his gaze. He spoke in a small and quiet voice, you have a compound behind your shop. Inoichi face faulted. Out of all the things he should have and could have asked, he asks that question. Inoichi snorted with amusement and made an even louder snort at the affronted look the boy took at his first snort. What? It's a good question. A compound behind this tiny shop, how is that even possible? Naruto defended. Inoichi let out a good-natured laugh before answering the little whiskered boy's question, I never said that our compound was behind this shop. Seeing that the boy was about to argue, he held a hand up and asked, do you recall what I said? You said this is the compound shop, so that means the Yamanaka compound is behind it. And that makes sense since Ino-chan went out the back. Inoichi held an amused smile, well I indeed said that this is the compound shop, this by no means mean that the compound is behind it. In fact, many compounds have shops like the Akimichis and their restaurants, the Naras and their pharmaceutical shops, the Aburamis and their Inoichi blinked. Actually I don't recall what they actually sell. Inoichi gave a sheepish grin. Naruto found himself easing down as he was steadily drawn into the conversation. So much, in fact, when Inoichi asked him why he impersonated Yui-san, Naruto answered in full with all details. Including the events that had led up to his henge of Yui-sensei, whom Naruto knew was close to Iruka-sensei. After all, the man was like a father to him. Inoichi nodded throughout the boy's tale and felt sympathy towards his plight. No human being should ever be shunned and forced to undergo a henge just by minor things. Naruto, is it really so bad to have a new sensei? Inoichi asked dryly. Change is bad. Naruto immediately barked. Inoichi sweat dropped, listen, I know of Kakashi Hatake and met with him a couple times, and though I don't know him all that well, I know that he is a good and honest man. How do you know if he's a good man if you don't know him all that well? Ah, you don't seem too knowledgeable about the clans and their specialty, do you? Naruto frowned, I'm only 10 years old. Regardless, you should learn about things like this in class. Naruto suddenly felt himself becoming miserably smaller as he reaverted his gaze downwards. He whispered in a barely audible whisper, I have no one but Guy-sensei to teach me anything. Iruka-sensei was the last one to teach me anything at the academy, but he. Inoichi held a hand up, I understand Naruto, no need to explain anything. The Yamanaka clan leader took many deep calming breaths as he tried controlling the rage that was slowly festering from within. If that was his child, he doesn't know what he would have done to the people in the state of rage he surely would have been in. He made a decision. Alright Naruto-kun, I've made a decision. If you so choose to, you may come here and I will teach you about various things that will be important to you if you want to become a serious shinobi. However, and unfortunately, I am a busy clan head, so it most likely would not be a daily thing, but I'm sure we'll work something out. Inoichi expected Naruto's eyes to be full of excitement and color, but when the whiskered child looked up, all he saw was a dull vibe and a fragile sense helplessness in the once vibrant azure eyes. Why would you do that for me? No one ever does anything that kind of thing for me. Inoichi gave the boy a resounding, then allow me to be one of the rare few. However, I will not force this choice upon you, so you may take as long as you want. Naruto's vacant expression gazing back was the only answer Inoichi received. The clan head sighed as he went to retrieve some flowers. Here boy, you may leave with these flowers, come back anytime you want to. The Jinchuriki hesitated for a few moments before finally relenting. Arigato. Naruto took the flowers and left with a lot on his mind. Inoichi on the other hand, decided to have a chat with his daughter. He was going to drill into her the fact that their family jutsu was to ever be used on another Konoha citizen unless directed by authorities. Even then it was an iffy matter. Regardless, she was to never use the family jutsu on a certain blonde Jinchuriki. Ever. So caught up in his thinking, Naruto didn't think to cover himself in his henge as he continued his trek towards his intended destination. Various villagers looked at him with disgust in their eyes. Why would the demon brat be carrying flowers? So caught up in their musings as to why the demon had flowers, they failed to notice the small canine that was tucked into the jumpsuit of said demon. The citizens of Konoha that were staring at him slowly grew angrier and angrier with each passing second. The QB brat seemed indifferent to their obvious disgust of him. In fact, he looked like he was completely occupied with some other thought. All of the spiteful villagers' minds ran along one similar thought process. How dare that brat ignore us, this won't be stood for. With an angered and knowing look, the villagers shared a glance and nodded. They would fix this issue on their own. If the shinobis of the village wouldn't finish what their precious Yondaime started, they the villagers will. Naruto, so consumed by his thoughts, failed to see an incoming pair of ladies. I'm serious Nai-chan. If I could eat dango for the rest of my life in exchange for. Thud. Thinking he was under an henge like he should have been, the whiskered boy glared angrily at the person who he had bumped into. Hey. What's the big idea, lady? Watch where you're going. Naruto yelled as he dusted himself off. He checked to see how Saki-chan was doing and saw that she still seemed to be sleeping. An unbelievable eye twitch briefly appeared on his face. This girl can sleep through all 3 shinobi wars. Eh? Aren't you the Uzumaki brat? Anko peered at him closely. Naruto paled, how did you know? Anko pulled a mirror out of nowhere and held in front of the boy's face. Blonde hair, blue eyes, and whiskered cheeks, looks like the only Uzumaki brat I've heard of. Naruto swore under his breath as he turned to make a run for it, but before he could take a single step, he found himself locked in place by 2 slender arms. Immediately, an odd scent of nature mixed with a feminine trait pleasantly assaulted his nose. He felt an indescribable heat rush up to his face as he felt 2 mounds of flesh press up against his small back. Why was he feeling such a weird sensation? And where do you think you're going? Anko whispered in a sensual tone. Naruto shivered. Kurenai face-palmed before she scolded her best friend, Anko, he's like 8 years old, quit it. Naruto was quick to argue, hey other lady. I'm 10. And you grandmas must be a billion years old, since you guys obviously can't tell I'm older than an 8-year-old. He held up all his fingers and shoved it towards lady who wasn't holding him, 10. I'm 10 years old, you old bats. Anko had a stupefied expression on while Kurenai simply quirked an eyebrow. The snake mistress of Konoha snapped out of her stupor with an irritated expression, we're 17 years old, you stupid little piece of. Anko? Language. He's only 10 years old. Naruto gave the red-eyed Jounin a thumbs up, thank you Ni-chan. I'm glad you're nice, unlike some people. He gave a not-so-subtle glare towards the purple-haired Kunoichi. Kurenai managed to stifle her giggle, lest she piss off easily ticked-off best friend even more than she already was. She was quick to restrain Anko as her purple-haired best friend tried demolishing the blonde child. Said blonde child took this time to observe the Kunoichis in front of him. As he took in every detail of their body, he realized that the Nichans were both really pretty. Anko, calming down somewhat, noticed that the Jinchuriki was staring at them. She turned her smirking face towards Kurenai. Look. He's staring at us. He's a little pervert. Naruto was brought out of his reverie when he heard those words. Feeling an embarrassed blush creeping up his face at being caught on blatantly staring at their body even if it was unintentional. Spluttering, the boy spoke in an extremely defensive tone, and no way. I would never. I don't like grandmas, you stupids. Anko and Kurenai shared a look before one giggled behind her hand while the other laughed boisterously. Anko looked at the pouting boy's face. Say Gaki, what were you Eve? My name's Naruto Uzumaki Dadabeo. Naruto boldly interrupted. He felt rather comfortable with the two Nichans in front of him, seeing that he felt no killer intent from them. There was also something different about them. If his 10-year-old mind had to put words to it, it was as if they were outcasts in a way. Regardless, they seemed like nice enough people. And again, Mizuki hit his intent well enough, and these Kunoichis felt stronger than the white-haired team if their chakra tank was anything to go by. So maybe he should keep his guard up just in case. Offhandedly, he briefly wondered how he knew how much chakra they had before shoving that thought to the back of his mind. The purple-haired one brought out a kunai and licked it in a seductive manner. Yep, he was definitely keeping his guard up. Anko gave Naruto a lecherous grin. I'm the sexy and single Mitarashi Anko. How do you do? She gave her kunai another lick, and her lecherous grin grew even wider when the boy shivered. Naruto-kun. She made sure to punctuate each syllable with a flirtatious tone. Kurenai shook her head in amusement with a tiny exasperated sigh. My name is Yuhi Kurenai. It is also a pleasure to meet you, Naruto-kun. She couldn't help but add her own little seductive enunciation to the familiar suffix. Needless to say, Naruto was one flustered Jinchuriki. He tried speaking back casually, but found himself as a stuttering mess. Oh. Nice to meet you, Anko-san and Kurenai-san. Kurenai found herself enjoying the situation. She was known as the young ice queen of Konoha because she never enjoyed any form of conversation with men. Yet here she was, talking with a boy and enjoying the tiny banter with her best friend. After several minutes of teasing the flustering boy, Anko voiced a question when she finally noticed the flowers in his hands. What's the flower for Gaki? Kurenai was not known as the Genjutsu mistress for nothing. Considered a prodigy in her own rights, she had to develop a keen eyesight. So, because of this trained ability, she did not fail to notice the subtle change of nervousness in the blue-eyed blonde, one from embarrassment from not knowing how to react to this foreign situation to one of a guarded nervousness. His tone of voice and speech made it all the more obvious. Oh. You know, just for a friend. Naruto subconsciously brought the bouquet of flowers around his back so the front of his body was blocking it. Anko, being one of the accomplished head interrogators at the T&I and an accomplished Kunoichi, noticed the subtle gesture and tilted her head. Was the boy scared of them? She looked at her best friend and they briefly shared a knowing look unnoticed by the boy. Feigning pretense, Anko spoke loudly. Ah well. Look at the time. I forgot I had something to do at this specific time and Kurenai-chan here was supposed to help me. Let's go, Nai-chan. Naruto narrowed his eyes in suspicion before letting it go. What they were gonna do was none of his business. He nodded and gave a polite bow. See you around, Kurenai-san, Anko-san. They gave a cheerful goodbye and then shunshined out of view. Deciding that he wasted enough time already, he began a full-blown sprint towards the hero's monument, a monolith constructed for all those who had died in battle for the village. He didn't mind talking to those Kunoichis, but he needed to vent and this was most comfortable way for him. Unbeknownst to the child Jinchuriki, a pair of Kunoichis were watching him from out of sight. Kurenai spoke first. Seems as if he's heading towards the monuments. Anko agreed. Seems like it. Let's follow him, Nai-chan. The Genjutsu mistress frowned. Even though he is a child, privacy is a right everyone should be able to enjoy. Anko-chan. The Takebetsu-joun rolled her eyes. Whatever, I'm going anyways. Come if you want to. She blew a tongue at her best friend before trailing the blonde from a distance. Kurenai sighed and went after both her best friend and the blonde Jinchuriki somewhat grudgingly, with a tiny bit of curiosity motivating her to follow. Even she wasn't immune to curiosity. It was sunset when he finally reached the site that was dedicated to the fallen shinobis. He kneeled down in front of the monument that held Iruka's name and prayed for him briefly before standing up and dusting himself off. He walked slowly towards the edge of the forest before walking through the thin tree lines. He walked carefully for 10 minutes, avoiding thorns and other irritable greenery, before finally coming to a clearing. In the middle of the clearing was a makeshift grave that Naruto had handmade with what he could find in the forestry in and around Konoha. It was as good as it was going to get for a 10-year-old. There was a crudely crafted wooden cross-shaped stake stuck into the ground that was about a foot tall. In the middle of the cross dangled his deceased sensei's headband. The cloth was somewhat loosely tied on the horizontal inner edge of the cross to keep it from falling. Naruto set the flowers down next to him as he sat in a cross-legged position. The blonde pouted as he began talking to his sensei. He began with the infuriating event that involved Guy and Kakashi that made him come this way. He then recalled the incident with Inoichi. So get this, Iruka-sensei, after I get knocked out somehow, I wake up on Ino-chan's lap. Crazy, right? But get this, that's even the craziest part. So I saw Inoichi and, be prepared, he wants to teach me. Naruto frowned, but I don't know, sensei, should I? Every time I trust someone, they always end up hurting me. I don't know if I can handle another betrayal. Naruto lied down in defeat with a sigh. Whoosh. Naruto shot up at the weird sound that was similar to a loud brush of wind. He looked around and saw something that should have been impossible. How? The boy whispered hoarsely. There, in front of his shocked eyes, was one very much alive Yumi no Iruka. An eye-crinkling smile appeared on the face of Iruka. Is that how anyone greets their favorite sensei, Naruto? Naruto's vision blurred with tears as he rushed to engulf the man in a hug. Wrapping his arms around his sensei as he apologized over and over again, I'm so sorry, sensei. I'm sorry. If only I wasn't such an idiot. Iruka held the boy back at arm's length and looked at him seriously. Naruto, never ever do I want you to apologize for that. I did what I thought was right and I never want you to think that what happened was your fault, understood? Naruto wiped at his tears and sniffled, but Iruka-sensei. If I didn't listen to Mizuki team, then you. Listen to me, Naruto, Iruka spoke softly. Instead of reflecting on the past, I need you to be a stronger one for your loved ones in Konoha. Naruto stared sullenly at his sensei, but I had no one else but you, sensei. Iruka shook his head. You baka, Naruto. You really have no one else left in the village that you care about. The last person was Itachi and he was. That's not what I asked, Naruto. What about the Hokage? The boy's answer was hesitant. Oh, I guess I forgot about Chichi. What about your classmates? Naruto's mind briefly flashed towards Ino-chan. The boy pouted. Fine, Iruka-sensei, I guess you're right. The scarred Chunin nodded in a smug knowingly manner. Of course I am. Now, tell me what's the deal with Inoichi-san. After Naruto explained in depth about what had happened between himself and the clan head of the Yamanakas, Iruka held a thoughtful pose. So you say you blacked out after he held his hand like this? The Chunin mimicked the ex-Tiandai's clan jutsu's hand seal. At Naruto's fervent nod, Iruka frowned. He used the Shintention no jutsu on him. That must have been dangerous still. Inoichi was a pretty good guy from when I worked with him. Naruto, I think you should go ahead and follow up on his lessons. It'll be good for you actually, you know what? As your sensei, I order you to go to him. Naruto frowned. Wait, how are you even here? Shouldn't you be, you know, he awkwardly gestured at the burial site he made for him, in there. He waved his hands around. Wait. Before you answer that. How come there aren't any funeral service or graves for all shinobis? Iruka returned a sad smile. That is something you can ask Inoichi-san, Naruto, for everything you've done for me, for giving me a family and being gone in my absence. But you're right, I do not belong here, it's time for me to return, goodbye. And just like that, Iruka whisked away like dust particles to a strong wind. At the disappearance of his sensei, Naruto felt his eyelids get heavy as he slowly opted to take an involuntary nap. As soon as his eyes were closed, the air around where Iruka stood standing previously shimmered and revealed a purple-haired Kunoichi in a trench coat. Next to her, appeared her crimson-eyed best friend. I deserve an award for my acting. Right, Nai-chan. Kurenai leveled her with a glare. First of all, it was my gain jutsu that allowed you to play the part of Iruka-san, and second of all, we're gonna be paying our respects to him. It's not kind to impersonate the dead Anko. Anko sighed. I know, I was just curious, and there was an opportunity that presented itself and I took it, but I agree, we should go pay our respects at the monolith. Kurenai nodded. After her and Anko followed Naruto to the hero's monument, they were immensely surprised to see that Naruto had gone off into the nearby trees to a makeshift grave. Already knowing about the boy's status as a Jinchuriki and the village's reception towards him, they knew that there were few that treated the boy with kindness, and Iruka was one of them. After the purple-haired Takubetsu Jounin heard that the blonde confessing to him having a run-in with Inoichi, Anko's old boss at T&I, their curiosity skyrocketed to the point where Kurenai listened to Anko's plan of wrapping her in a gain jutsu of Iruka so they could pry information out the whiskered child. It worked too well. Anko seemed to have realized this too, seeing as to how easily she agreed to paying her respects to the deceased Chunin. She glanced back at the sleeping boy as she walked away and thought about how much of a good-natured child he was, even though he was hurt mentally and physically so many times by Konoha. A determined expression came across her face. She was going to the Sandaime to perhaps teach the boy. He most definitely needed someone he could trust, and she was willing to be that person. After all, it was the least she could do since she basically broke several laws to satisfy her own curiosity. Noticing that her purple-haired friend wasn't alongside her, Kurenai looked around only to see that Anko was gazing intensely at the boy. "Anko, are you okay?" The young snake mistress of Konoha pursed her lips and answered several moments after, "Yeah, it's just I see a lot of me in him the way they treat him." She shook her head, "Never mind. Let's get going." With a wide smile, Anko skipped off towards the monolith with Kurenai looking on after her. The red-eyed Jounin had a sad and knowing look. "Anko?" He stood in front of the compound shop in his henge of another random civilian. Naruto peered into the flower shop through the window nervously. It was a new day and after yesterday's talk with Iruka, whom Naruto knew, according to himself, wasn't real, but rather a figment of his imagination due to his deep subconscious that was still emotional. He figured it had to be something like that. A dream or something. Or maybe he was crazy. Being nervous, antsy, and preoccupied with his thoughts, Naruto's henge slowly glitched out as the tall random-bodied illusion shrunk into the tiny blonde. He immediately made for another transformation, but it came out as a blotched and pale version of himself. He looked around and saw that a few villagers were looking at him suspiciously, while a couple of them snarled at him, indicating they saw his real identity. Cursing, he looked around briefly inside through the window and saw that no one was there. Deciding that maybe he should just try and come back another day, he made to run away, especially since he couldn't get his henge to work properly. However, just as he was about to take a step away from the shop, the door swung open rather violently. Thud. "Daddy. Naruto is here." Naruto froze as his henge completely went away to reveal his true self. "Eh?" He turned around with a perplexed look on his face. "Ino-chan." At his words, Saki-chan's head slowly roused itself from Naruto's jumpsuit in a drowsy manner. Ino squealed at seeing Naruto make such an adorably confused whiskered face, before pausing in her thoughts. She studied Naruto's face carefully and thought to herself, since when was Naruto this, she couldn't bring herself to admit the fact that Naruto was pretty cubic. "You alright there, Ino-chan?" "Oh, of course I am. It was just, you know your dog." "That's right. Just your dog is all." Ino mentally patted herself for coming up with such a clever excuse, though her face was flushed a shade of red. "Okay." Naruto shrugged, "Anyways, I was just gonna go away." "Naruto? You made it." Inoichi had a pleasant smile on his face as he ushered both the children into the store. Looking around at the villagers that were not so subtly glaring at the whiskered boy previously around his store, he sent them a glare spiked with some killer intent, which achieved the result of them looking away uncomfortably. Inoichi nodded to himself in satisfaction and put on the closed door sign. Naruto paid rapt attention to Ino as she babbled about the different kind of flowers and their meanings. The boy looked rather eager to be learning about the flowers and their values. Inoichi's soft smile disappeared when he saw his daughter about to step on a small sharp piece of pot that would surely pierce her thin sandals and into her flesh. "Ino-chan. Watch out." As fast as he was, Naruto reacted a bit faster and was able to reach his daughter because of their already close distance. Ino felt a rush and saw a blur of orange, and she suddenly felt warmth engulf her. Ino recovered from her sense of vertigo and bewilderedly looked around only to make eye contact with deep-sea blue eyes. She looked down at the floor and noticed a stray piece of sharp ceramic jutting upwards. The slowly returned her gaze to the luring eyes of a certain boy. Immediately putting together the pieces on what just transpired, Ino found herself burning up from being in such a close proximity with Naruto and being in his arms. She spoke. "You jz teasing at him?" She tried to at least. Naruto scrunched his eyes slightly in confusion. "What?" The Jinchuriki looked at Ino's father in referral towards his daughter's attempt at speech. "What?" However, Inoichi had on a strange expression on his face that Naruto couldn't really identify. The clan head of the Yamanakas blinked in rapid owlish fashion as he watched his daughter stammer uncontrollably and backing out of the boy's embrace slowly. After muttering out a few incoherent words and phrases, Ino darted out the back door of the shop. Naruto, ever so curious, began to follow after Ino. Inoichi realized that his daughter was beginning to be infatuated with the blonde Jinchuriki, so he quickly gripped the boy in steely grip. "Come Naruto, we'll begin your lessons now." But Ino-chan seemed a little. "Lessons? Now?" Inoichi sternly said with a way too wide of a smile. Naruto gulped. "Okay." So they went into knowledge of what Inoichi thought a shinobi should know. This ranged from politics, ninja arts, elements of ninjutsu, chakra techniques, psychology, and even manners. For several weeks, they went into these topics in a considerable amount for a 10-year-old. Inoichi was actually quite proud with how well Naruto took in his words. After the first day, the boy had said he wanted to try a new way of learning better, so he summoned 9 other Kage Bunshins. This way, he heard the lessons 10 times a day. It was quite an efficient way to learn. This went on steady until one day, Naruto came up to Inoichi with a question. Inoichi-sensei, I had a question regarding what happened to Shinobis after they, kicked the bucket. Naruto finished awkwardly. The clan leader frowned, well let's see. No, not that, Naruto hastily interrupted, I meant how come some Shinobis don't get funeral services and things like that. I remember one time when I was little one of the daimyos that passed away had a big all funeral thingy. I guess what I'm asking is Naruto hesitated a bit before continuing. How come Iruka-sensei didn't have one? Naruto laid the flowers down horizontally at the base of the buried stake before anger started welling up inside of him. As he learned, it was very uncommon for anyone in Konoha to have a proper burial unless they were someone of importance. Much like the Hokage or an important clan head or political figure. Naruto clenched his fists. But not some clanless shinobi like Iruka Yamino. Someone like himself. They were unimportant. He took a deep calming breath and relaxed his clenched fists. This is why I'm gonna become stronger. For Iruka-sensei. I will get stronger, sensei. Naruto vowed as he dipped his head, I will change the world for the better Databeo. Sounds of twigs being crushed crackled upon the evening sky. That is a very bold claim, Naruto-kun. Emotions ran wild as the Jinchuriki instantly recognized the voice. Sadness. Rage. Betrayal. Naruto whispered response was low with barely suppressed anger as his sapphire blue eyes met an impassive charcoal gaze. Itachi. Sounds of twigs being crushed crackled upon the evening sky. That is a very bold claim, Naruto-kun. Emotions ran wild as the Jinchuriki instantly recognized the voice. Sadness. Rage. Betrayal. Naruto whispered response was low with barely suppressed anger as his sapphire blue eyes met an impassive charcoal gaze. Itachi. Naruto stood defiantly with a hardened face. Despite trying to keep himself calm and collected, the Jinchuriki couldn't help but clench his fist and shake with rage. With his other hand, he kept Saki-chan inside his vest with a firm grip in hopes that she would stay quiet. It seemed to be working. I see you still haven't activated the Sharingan, meaning you either can't or you haven't. Naruto ignored that statement and snarled at the other surviving Uchiha with a myriad of negative emotions. What do you want, traitor? Itachi stared at Naruto impassively for several long uncomfortable moments. Well, Naruto demanded. HNIC-san de Ami-sama hasn't told you anything, past, present, nor future. What the hell are you talking about, you scum? You are coming with me tonight, whether you like it or not. Like hell I am. Fukuku looks like you found him, Itachi-kun. Naruto felt an intense unpleasant shiver rack his body at the new voice that slithered into the conversation. Slick, cunning, snake-like were the words he'd used to describe the voice. Almost to back up Naruto's descriptive words, a tall, pale-skinned man seemingly slithered out of the shadows to stand next to the traitorous Uchiha. Almost instinctively, the Jinchuriki jumped back with the guard up. This action seemed to have amused a snake Sannin. The pale-skinned shinobi chuckled gleefully, look at Itachi-kun. Such great instincts, or dear Naruto-kun has so much potential for one so young, wouldn't you agree? Itachi shrugged, it does not matter much to me, Orochimaru, we have our orders. Naruto growled deeply, I'm not going with any of you freaks. The blonde brought his fingers together in T formation, Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Jutsu. Puffs of clouds formed and out came 12 Kage Bunshins. However, instead of being intimidated or even a hint of worriedness, Orochimaru licked his lips and leaned forward with anticipation. Excellent, Naruto-kun. Show me more. Naruto knew he was outmatched, but what could he do? He couldn't run away, they'd capture him. If Orochimaru was anything like Itachi, that would mean he was strong and faster than most, if not all ninjas. There was no way he could get away from Orochimaru, much less Itachi. So he decided that he would settle for the idea of attracting as much attention to himself as possible. Hopefully, creating enough ruckus would bring help to his situation. How the hell did these two even get into Konoha anyways? Was it really that easy for the enemies to enter the village, just like that Kami? He was gonna have to scold the old man for that if he ever got out of this mess. Orochimaru, do not deviate from the plan. We are here to simply extract him and evac. Itachi frowned, this is not fortunate. At this rate, Naruto will be in the hands of death by the end of the minute. I don't think the leader would like that too much. Oh, but I wonder why our dear Naruto-kun created clones, perhaps to cause enough ruckus to alert reinforcement. At Naruto's nervous gulp at being found out, the snake sage grinned deviously, looks like we should subdue the Jinchuriki a bit, no Itachi-kun. Orochimaru hissed out excitedly. Damn it. They found out super fast, guess I'll have to adapt. Wait, what did he call me? Naruto quirked an eyebrow, Jinchuriki. What is that? Power of the human sacrifice. Itachi narrowed his eyes, do not get reckless, Orochimaru, the objective is not to kill him, but to extract him. The pale Sannin scoffed, whatever, now, let's take care of the 12 clones. Orochimaru paused and his eyes widened, he had counted, on instinct, how many shadow clones the boy produced and… where is the 12th clone? Immediately, Orochimaru vanished in a blur, and along with his movement came the distinct popping that indicated all of Naruto's Kage Bunshins had been ended all in half a second. But all the Kage Bunshins in the vicinity. He had discreetly sent one to get reinforcement, preferably the Hokage or some jounin that was hopefully patriotic enough to aid the village. After all, the two traitors in Konoha that stemmed the leaf was obviously a threat to Konoha and her people. Hopefully, the Kage Bunshin had enough sense to henge into someone else. He didn't want the risk of no one helping simply cause it was him. Naruto gritted his teeth as his clones were dispelled instantaneously. Even after all that training, I can't hold my own for a few seconds you. As soon as the 11th pop was heard, Naruto found himself gasping for air as he was hoisted by the throat against a tree. Where did you send the last clone? Orochimaru hissed angrily. So caught up in his excitement at such a potential-filled experiment, he didn't pay attention to the clone that escaped. Naruto chuckled despite the gravity of his situation. Heh, what's wrong? Snake got your tongue, Hebe team. Instead of getting a riled up response like he expected, he was dropped suddenly onto the hard ground. Naruto immediately scrambled himself upright into a hastily made guard. The pale-skinned Sannin roared with a demented laugh. Kukukuku, he threw his head back. Yes, Naruto-kun, you are wonderful. The creepy long-haired shinobi then leaned forward. Entertain me. Eyes gleaming with excited malice, Orochimaru extended his tongue into his cloak and brought out a kunai. Without warning, Orochimaru lunged forward at a speed that Naruto could not even hope to comprehend. However, the Sannin's action with obvious intent was in vain, for it was only to be met with another steel kunai. Itachi stood in front of the Jinchuriki with narrowed eyes glaring at the pale-faced man. Control yourself, Orochimaru, or I will be forced to for you. In response, the Sannin chuckled darkly. Do you truly think you would be able to stop me from what I want, Itachi-kun? No, I am a Sannin who went on par with the great salamander of. He paused mid-sentence and sharply glanced over his shoulder and jumped to the side just as a barrage of kunes and shuriken sailed by him. Itachi, also foreseeing the attack, grabbed Naruto by the shoulders and forced him to lay on the ground as the sharp weapons flew overhead safely. Orochimaru tilted his head in curiosity before a nasty wide grin showed itself on his face. Kukuku, it's been a while, Anko-chan. The purple-haired Kunoichi came out the shadows with an unveiled expression of utter hatred marring her face. I don't know why you came, Orochimaru, but you died today. Orochimaru laughed loudly. So this is what your clone sent for Naruto-kun? He licked his lips and redirected his attention toward his ex-apprentice's neck. I wonder what effects the seal had on you, Anko-chan. Maybe I will take you back with me. You're not gonna be taking me anywhere if you die, fucker. Anko snarled before lunging at the Sannin. Itachi watched briefly before turning to Naruto, only to find the spot he had thrown the boy for cover was empty. Activating his Dijutsu, his eyes followed the distinct trail that was left by the boy in his haste to escape. He shook his head and calmly sunshined out the clearing. Always making things difficult to Tauto. As he ran, angry tears fell without restraint. Seeing the elder Uchiha brought raw emotions that Naruto didn't want to feel. In addition to that, he was running away from the help he had gotten. This situation was all too familiar. Kuzo? I need to get help fast. Thud. Yelping from what he ran into, Naruto fell backwards onto his butt and rubbed his now bruised nose soothingly. Immediately realizing that he ran into something that felt like clothed flesh, the downed boy jumped up and glared at whoever. Huh? Naruto looked around. There's no one around. He felt something brush his legs and on instinct beat his leg back for a savage kick, only to stop when he noticed the cute hazel eyes of Saki-chan looking at him. Oh shoot. Saki-chan. I'm sorry. You must have fell out when I bumped into whatever. He bent down and put the puppy back into his jacket. Now you have to stay there and I promise everything will be okay. Saki wagged her tail and looked at him with her innocent eyes and gave him a lick before snuggling back into the jacket. Naruto instantly relaxed. Good girl. You have obtained a companion, I see. The Jinchuriki felt his blood run cold at the monotonous voice he was oh so familiar with. He leapt an impressively far distance for a 10-year-old and turned around with a glare. Holding a kunai he had plucked from the assault on Orochimaru, he went into a defensive stance. Why are you here, Itachi? There was no sense in running. If Itachi caught him this fast, it meant that Naruto was way too slow, even with all of Gai-sensei's training. That thought made his body tighten with anger. A small smile twitched on the elder Uchiha's lip that served to irk Naruto even more. Gritting his teeth, Naruto was about to yell before Itachi spoke. I told you, Naruto-kun, you are to come with me. And why the hell would I do that? So you can kill me, Naruto sneered. Itachi shrugged. If you do not come with me, the charcoal eyes turned red with 3 tomos spinning around them, I will kill her. With that said, he brought out a small black Tibetan Mastiff pup out. I believe you called her Saki-chan. What? Naruto ripped his jacket off and saw Saki-chan dissipate into several dark crows. When? He whispered. When you fell. He said simply. I'm sure you can piece together the rest, you are an intelligent boy after all. Give her back. Naruto roared. Come with me and she'll be safe, otherwise I will kill her. Don't you dare. Naruto growled out, don't you dare take away the one of the few things I have left to love. Then do not resist. Came the monotonous reply. That stupid voice. Always like that. The dull tone of the Uchiha infuriated Naruto to no end. So much, in fact, that red chakra started seeping out of his pores. Give her back. Naruto roared as his facial feature began to attain more feral and bloodlustered attributes. The whiskers on his cheeks darkened and became rougher as his eyes took on a bloody red color. In addition to this, his hair became spikier and his nails elongated into claws. Itachi narrowed his eyes, looks like the eye is not activating. A lost cause perhaps, I wonder. He glanced at the puppy he was holding by the tuft of fur on the back of her neck. Feeling the incredibly surplus of chakra coursing through his network, Naruto settled onto all fours, it just felt right. The new sense of high gave Naruto a sense of high. I can do this. I've never felt this powerful before. He glared at the man he once held a high regard to. I will kill him. I will not ask again, Naruto-kun, come or lose her. Naruto narrowed his red eyes, you won't be doing anything like that. As soon as the words finished, the cube-fied blonde launched himself from position astounding speed. So astounding, it caused Itachi to widen his eyes in surprise. Fast. He's been training. However, even despite the fact that Naruto had been training, the boy's attempt at lunging at the Uchiha had been in vain. Itachi, after all, is an S-rank missing nin. The traitorous Uchiha sidestepped the blonde and brought out a kunai just as the boy turned around for another attack. Naruto froze. You have been warned. Slick. A pained whimper escaped Saki as Itachi sliced her stomach open. What do you think you're doing, you sick fool? It happened in the slowest of motions. His eyes were locked on the pure eyes of his puppy. The pained gaze that she returned did nothing to ease his soul. But for a split second, just as it seemed she was about to wag her tail happily. Slick. A sickening fountain of blood squirted out onto a horrified face of the whiskered child. Immediately, Itachi flung the carcass of the dead puppy directly at Naruto. The body of Saki-chan skidded to a halt at his feet. The initial shock broke Naruto out of his slight demonic transformation. A demented hysteria fell upon the boy. No. This can't be real. There's no. It can't. He looked up for anything that would reaffirm in his hopeless belief of her being alive. His eyes darted wildly as he scratched at his neck, drawing blood. Suddenly, he looked up with a triumphant maniacal gleam in his eyes, a genjutsu. It has to be. He only knew of one way to break out of a genjutsu. Raising the kunai, he prepared to plunge it into his stomach. Right as the kunai was about to penetrate, Itachi appeared in front of him and shoved the body of the dog that Naruto had grown to love in a short amount of time. She is dead. There was no remorse in his voice. That's when an excruciating pain fell upon Naruto's face. To be precise, pain was felt in his right eye. Familiar howls of pain accompanied the night once again. Itachi looked on calmly as the Jinchuriki writhed in pain. He didn't want it to resort to this, but the elder Uchiha knew the pain was necessary, especially since the eye was so powerful. Putting Naruto through the pup's death was the catalyst needed. He approached the boy only to leap back as three bodies shunted in front of Naruto. Immediately, the three new people to the scene were already a tense defensive stance. He stated their names respectively, Kakashi-senpai, Guy-senpai, Kurenai-san. It seems as if Naruto's clone managed to garner some reinforcements. Kakashi was the first to speak, though not at the traitorous Uchiha. Kurenai-san, I believe that is Anko's signature over there, please go to her, and once you see an opportunity, retreat immediately. Kurenai nodded, more than antsy to go help her best friend. She again performed a shunshin towards the two clashing chakras signature. He turned towards the guy, perhaps you should too. Nonsense. Itachi is just as dangerous, if not more dangerous than Orochimaru. It would be unyouthful for me to not aid you. Besides. The youthfulness shines brightly within Anko-san and Kurenai-san. Please, go. I frowned, Kakashi, you know Itachi is the more dangerous enemy here, and Naruto is the priority. The rival of Guy cursed inwardly. Anko, Kurenai and Guy were supposed to back each other up. Technically, Guy shouldn't even be here. Itachi cleared his throat to retrieve their attention. Guy-senpai would not be too big of an obstacle at the moment. Kakashi narrowed his eyes at the Uchiha, the moon is bright tonight. I looked at his rival confusingly, what are you saying, Kakashi? That makes no sense. Itachi spoke without regards to Guy, if only the red clouds weren't wayward tonight. Kakashi instantly relaxed, I'm surprised you are the seed Hokage-sama mentioned. Itachi nodded. I stared confusingly at his rival, what is going on? The silver-haired jounin glanced at his fellow jounin, recall how Hokage-sama requested a new mastership over Naruto. Well, it wasn't exactly me, well, it was me initially, but plans changed and he needed a new sense and he gestured at Itachi, well, you're looking at him. I frowned, but that makes no sense. How's an unyouthful person like Itachi in charge of? Kakashi held a hand up, I do not know the details guy, but this is an SS ranked mission, no one outside of you, me, Itachi, Jiraiya-sama, and the Hokage-sama know of this. However, I will tell you this, Itachi is one of the good guys. I remained silent at this. The son of the White Fang turned a curious eye towards the other Taijutsu-wielding person, though I am curious how this came to be given the discrepancy of the past events. I am not privy to share any information. Itachi simply replied and moved on to the next topic, although I suspect who will journey with me, I should still ask, which of you will be accompanying me? I broke his silence, this makes no sense. Why would you be one to train my student? And why the hell would one of us accompany you? Kakashi, this must be a ploy, I do not trust Itachi enough to hand over Naruto-kun. Kakashi shook his head, guy, I personally talked to Hokage-sama about this mission, and the phrase he responded with aligns exactly within mission parameters of which we were subjected to. I glared at Itachi, still. I do not believe that suddenly guy felt himself losing consciousness. What did you do? The green beast of Konoha fell in a forward motion onto his knees into a slumped posture. Wordlessly, Kakashi placed his rival in a more comfortable position. Now that he is out of the picture, Kakashi-senpai, please undo the game jutsu placed upon Naruto-kun. And do not worry about Guy-senpai, he will wake within 15 minutes. Naruto was under a game jutsu the whole time. Quickly forming the required hand seal, Kakashi gathered chakra and overrode surrounding illusion. Instead of the still and lying boy he saw on the ground, he saw same boy crying with pain all the while writhing and shaking with pain. Eyes widened with shock, the Konoha Jounin turned to Itachi with noticeable killer intent, what's going on? What did you do? Never one to betray emotions, Itachi replied stoically with the same impassive face, the Sharingan, it seems to be awakening. Kakashi shook his head already knowing how Naruto obtained the Uchiha Taijutsu, that doesn't make any sense. My Sharingan had no trouble adjusting. You did not have a demon sealed inside you, Itachi pointed out bluntly. I suppose Kakashi conceded, he looked at his sensei's son briefly before looking back at Itachi, how do we go about this now? Itachi stared back impassively. I do not know. What? Kakashi closed his eyes and took deep breaths lest he lashed out at the Uchiha, what the hell is that supposed to mean? Again, I do not know. How the hell do you not? There was an unforeseen variable. Kakashi understood immediately, Orochimaru. Itachi nodded, I thought out various options, but I could not think of one that would not compromise my position. What do you mean by that? I am not privy to share any information. Kami, this is frustrating. I apologize, senpai. Kakashi waved him off, we need to do something about Naruto, but Orochimaru is a problem we need to tend to first. Kukikuku, no need to worry about that, I'll be gone on my own accord. The aforementioned pale Sannin stepped out of the shadows with two bodies lumped over his shoulder. With a sadistic glint in his eyes, he aimed a predatory smile towards a Jinchuriki and Uchiha. Two perfect experiments for him. Speaking of the Jinchuriki, the Sannin suddenly became malicious. The snake sage hissed at Itachi with anger, what is the wrong with my perfect experiment? What did you do to him? Kakashi found himself cursing again as he recognized a form of one Anko Mitarashi and Kurenai on the pale-faced traitor. At this point, the Sannin was becoming hysterical. What did you do with my perfect experiment? Orochimaru bit his thumb and hissed out, Kuchius no Jutsu, summoning technique. A giant 30 feet in length and 4 feet wide appeared. Orochimaru handed the two experiments he had obtained in his ex-apprentice and her friend to the snake, keep them for a bit at hideout 1209 until I come by. Before Kakashi could do anything, the snake poofed out of existence. The Sannin's eyes blazed with anger at the two Sharingan users, looks like I'll just have to replace Naruto-kun with you hot Aki. At this, Kakashi's Sharingan activated. Orochimaru smirked, yes, you will be a fine substitute hot Aki. Suddenly, Orochimaru cursed as he felt a familiar signature stir in the clearing they were situated in. He looked around and saw a patch of air that seemed to be shimmying and distorting. The patch of air revealed itself to be a blinking Mido guy. Unyouthful that Genjutsu guy muttered blearily. The traitorous Sannin cursed his luck, the extraction was to go without a hitch, but Kakashi and Guy were no ordinary Jounins, no, they were strong, especially Guy. Himself and Itachi were supposed to be out of here in a blink of an eye with the Jinchuriki, then they would go on their way. Itachi would have carried the boy, then Orochimaru would strike. So why was their plan going to shit? Itachi's information was never faulty. It all clicked for the snake Sannin. His eyes widened with murderous anger, Itachi. You betrayed us. Orochimaru knew when to cut his loss and made to flee instantly. However, he knew that he couldn't return to the hideout of Akatsuki. Already he was a suspicious recruit to the group, no one seemed to have trusted him. In addition to the suspicion that was brewing within the organization, there was another probable cause to not return. Knowing Itachi, the Uchiha probably had already taken precaution to ensure Orochimaru as a traitor to the organization's agenda. Before he left the scene however, he took one glance at Naruto before making a TSK noise, such potential wasted. Oh well, there would surely be more opportunities in the future. Kakashi let out a breath of relief before turning a cautious glance towards Itachi. Was it okay for him to be let go? Itachi nodded, indeed. I have set up the necessary steps for the day he would turn against us. Kakashi nodded, he looked at Guy, are you going to dispel that genjutsu now? Without a word, the Uchiha looked at the pseudo Guy, and the image of the Taijutsu master disappeared. Moments after, an area not too far away revealed a still sleeping Guy where Kakashi had left him. With Orochimaru out the way senpai, are you ready to leave? The silver-haired Jounin sent two clone to inform of the events of today and carry Guy to safety. With everything set and out of the way, he nodded and sighed. Including what had happened to Kurenai and Anko. Needless to say, the Hokage was not going to be happy. Itachi walked over the now still and unconscious blonde Jinchuriki. Let us be on our way senpai. Kakashi agreed, let's. The wielders of the Uchiha's famous Taijutsu shunshined out of the area. It was time to begin Naruto's training anew. Naruto felt a wet sensation applied to the posterior of his back. For a second, he panicked thinking it was blood, but the liquid was way too thin to be blood. So he relaxed for a few minutes, the feeling was a stark contrast to stinging sensation in his eyes. The water provided a cool floating feeling that dulled the pain in his eyes. Hesitantly and very, very slowly, Naruto lifted his eyelids in a painstakingly slow manner. As soon as half a nanometer was lifted, the boy clenched his eyes shut in fear that opening his eyes would bring about a new set of pain. He took deep calming breaths and focused on the cool liquid sensation upon his back and felt the darkness around him. That was good, it wasn't bright and blinding. Increasing his pace of breathing he clenched his eyes even more so and decided that he would do it fast. There would be no time to think, otherwise he'd go back on his words and remain a blind rat. He sat up and seized his breathing and opened his eyes wide and gasped. His gasp, however, didn't stem from pain, but rather, clarity. Everything was so sharply clear to him. It was as if life's resolution had been cloudiness up until now. Realizing only now that he was in the confines of what seemed to be best described as sewer-like, Naruto turned his head behind to see the exact same setting. The boy frowned, this place looks never-ending. Regardless of his thought, Naruto decided that sitting in place would get him nowhere, literally. Standing up, the blonde straightened his clothes and noted that his clothes were dry. Brows furrowed, Naruto went into a crouch and dipped his finger into the shallow layer of water. Interesting, my finger stays wet, but my clothes doesn't, that's cool. Naruto saw something odd within the water and peered closer. Just as the water was about to still and allow him to see the anomaly, a powerful ancient voice boomed. Ikoso, ninjin, welcome, human. The blonde had to strain his neck to look up at the giant pair of red eyes. No, what are you? The QB no Kitsune gave a malicious smile, don't pretend you impudent fool, I know you know boy. The smile on the fox's face grew even wider, too bad you're being drawn away, we'll continue this later. Naruto remained silent as he was being drawn towards reality. The Uzumaki's eyes never left the gaze of the ancient entity's sadistic glare. Naruto willed the constant bop of the surface he felt against his body, too still with no avail. The rough movement of whatever the hell finally jerked the boy awake when he fell over onto another surface. It slowly dawned onto him that his face was a bit wet and part of shirt that was close to his collarbone. He blinked and the blurriness suddenly dripped away, showing that tears were waiting in his eyes. Why am I crying? Like a broken dam, the memories flooded through his mind and he clenched his eyes with his jaws clenched at the torturing and agonizing memories. Why would he? Naruto couldn't keep his stomach content down and released everything onto the surface of the floor. He rotated his body and curled his legs up into a fetal position. He whimpered and cried himself to sleep. Hours later, another particular rough bump in the road startled Naruto into consciousness. He sat up and glared before blinking rapidly due to the dryness of his eyes. In an attempt to get the crust that formed at the edge of his eyes, Naruto raised his arms. He tried to at least. However, his attempts fell short because his arms were firmly tied against his sides. He struggled against the restraining ropes, but it wouldn't budge. Naruto began sending chakra throughout his body only to feel it being absorbed into the ropes. The frustrated growl ripped loose from his throat as he began thrashing violently against the restraints. I wouldn't do that if I were you. By the way, those are chakra restraining ropes. Naruto shot up and turned to the corner of what he now assumed to be the inside of a carriage. His puffy eyes fell upon a familiar white-haired man casually reading an orange book. You. What the hell are you doing here? Reading. Naruto narrowed his eyes. Are you working for Itachi? You're sort of idiotic, did you know that? Anger coursed through the Jinchuriki's veins as he snarled, let me out of here. Kakashi finally dropped his book and looked at the boy with his one eye. He in a cool tone, oh? And what would you do? Run back to Konoha to be weak, again? Let me out and I'll show you how weak I am, you bastard. The silver-haired Jounin let out an annoyed sigh. How in the world was he going to convince this stubborn muled boy that he was on his side? Naruto, you need to listen to me. Go to hell. The only way you even getting a remote possibility of getting out those chakra-absorbing ropes is if you be cooperative. Naruto shut it up, albeit with a fierce glare. Kakashi I smiled at the blonde, okay. Now, you will now be training under my tutelage for about a year and a half. Understand? Okay, good. Without waiting for his response, the Jounin opened the carriage door and jumped out. The Jinchuriki blinked owlishly at that statement. Waiting despairingly, Naruto cursed every once in a while when the method of transport hit a rough bump on the road. There was no way for him to escape. Hours later, Naruto found himself scowling while staying eerily still. There was nothing for him to do but contemplate on recent events, and slowly, he's felt a rising anger. Anger at not being able to save Saki-chan. Anger at not being able to make a difference. Anger at being weak. Why is it that I can't ever do anything? Suddenly, the carriage stopped and the door opened. Kakashi poked his head in, we're here. He made a hand seal, and the ropes that tied his legs together were dropped. With a moderate amount of struggle, Naruto finally managed to get up on his legs. He took small steps to the door and peered down. The drop wasn't that big, maybe 2 to 3 feet, but there was practically no lighting. Once he hopped off the carriage, he felt much better on solid ground. The constant rumbling and tumbling of being inside the carriage gave him a new sense of hatred for confined mobile transports. It was only then, after he finished appreciating the solid ground he stood on, did he realize the gravity of his situation. He carefully peered around and realized that he was in a vast cavern that seemed to stretch 300 yards in a radius. He looked up and noted that the ceiling was way up, perhaps around 400 yards. There were few torches that gave the cavern an ominous lighting. He nervously looked around, noticed there was no one around. He gulped and walked around in hopes of finding an exit. After walking for what seemed to be hours, Naruto came across a door. Thankfully it was a door that was open via push and not knob. The only problem was that the door was more like a gate. He looked up in awe, the size similar to the barred cell that held the entity inside him. The QB no Kitsune. Naruto sighed, so much mystery revolved around him. As soon as he saw the giant chakra beast, he immediately understood why he was so hated. More than likely, the QB was sealed inside of him. Tales of the Yondaime stated that he had defeated the giant beast. Why would they lie? Naruto gritted his teeth, why would the Yondaime pick him, an orphan of all people? Was it because he already had no one? Was it a random coincidence? Probably thought that a giant demon wouldn't affect an orphan's already shitty life. Naruto bitterly thought. He shook his head, he would have to find the answers after this situation he was currently in. Deciding he already spent long enough thinking, he attempted to push the door open. He grunted as he exerted as much possible force against the door while being limited in terms of mobility. The door didn't budge. Naruto growled in annoyance. He took several steps back and prepared to charge at the door when it suddenly opened. His eyes immediately took in the light in what he hoped to be outside. Soon, however, the light provided at the end was blocked by a silhouette. Yo. You found it. Naruto charged at the silver-haired Jounin without a second thought. Kakashi easily sidestepped the tackle attempt. Kakashi chuckled but stopped when he noticed that Naruto had a smirk on his face. The Uzumaki's intention wasn't to hit him, but it was to run to the exit. Kakashi blinked after the boy before pulling out his orange book. He began a carefree walk after the boy. As he approached the end, he speeded up and burst through the exit and looked around in astonishment. He was on a green slab of land that stopped at a large turquoise body of still water. That, though, was not what made him look around in astonishment, and he was surrounded by what seemed to be the interior of the waterfall. At the edge of liquid curtain, there were various beds of boulders. The waterfall itself was a magical Atlantis blue. He was literally looking at the flow of the waterfall inside out. It was so tranquil and serene. Realizing he spent too much time admiring the scenery, he cursed, there was no time to be wasted on enjoying the damn view. He looked around for a piece of wood or boat. Anything that could serve as a floating device for him. He looked over his shoulder and saw Kakashi approaching casually. He cursed and stepped into the water and prepared to drown, trying to escape. Kakashi paused. Naruto, I promise I am not here to harm you. There is a greater harm out there and you need to understand that. Naruto bit his lip in hesitance and glanced into the shallow water his ankles were submerged in. Kakashi jumped at the opportunity to drive in his point. Naruto, take this into consideration, if my wishes were to truly harm you, you'd be harmed by now. Naruto chewed his inner cheeks in great thoughts. Kakashi's statement did make sense. But why? The Jounin sighed. He sat down and patted a spot near him. The whiskered blonde reluctantly walked over and plopped down cross-legged, though it was a bit far from where Kakashi originally patted. Can you take the ropes off me at least? The silver-haired Sharingan user smiled, maybe if you're good. In response, the boy grumbled about dumb ninja cyclops and stupid silver-haired people. Okay, explain. Being serious for once, Kakashi put down his orange book once more. It all started a decade ago. Naruto locked eyes with the Jounin. I presume it started with the Kyuubi's attack. Said Jounin's visage became shocked. How did you know? Did someone tell you? What do you know? Tell me now, Naruto. Naruto let out an annoyed sigh. Maybe if you stop blasting me questions, I can tell you now. First off, no one told me. Second of all, I just guessed. Third of all, I know that I'm in a situation that I don't want to be because of Uchiha's and the Kyuubi. Since I was born on the day of the attack, it's really not that hard to piece together some things. The only thing I don't know is how I'm connected to all this. That was a lie, somewhat. As soon as he encountered the fox in what he assumed to be his subconscious, he knew that he contained the fox somehow, or part of the fox. He just didn't know how the hell it got there and why he was picked. Kakashi looked at the boy shrewdly before nodding. Okay. Anyways. As you said, leading to the day of the Kyuubi attack, there seemed to be some seeds of dissent in Konoha. Nearly everyone was aware of the tenseness of the atmosphere when it started. The animosity was directed at the Uchihas, a clan known for its confidence, so to speak. At this Naruto scoffed. Confidence? More like bullheaded douchebaggery. Kakashi continued, unaware of Naruto's thought process. Apparently, the Uchihas were not happy with their prestige and power status in the village. Regardless, the Yondaime was able to keep their greed at bay. Unfortunately, the Yondaime died the night the Kyuubi attacked. However, the next day, we realized we didn't provoke the beast into attacking. So that begged the question, why did the Kyuubi no Kitsune attack? Almost immediately, suspicion fell upon the Uchihas due to their ocular abilities of their Taijutsu. Hushed whispers here and there circulated around the village. The Sharingan users became even more reserved. Tensions increased, and the village found wind of a coup d'etat via Anbu. To be precise, a certain Uchiha. Naruto's mental gears wheeled like crazy. Anbu, a certain Uchiha. Itachi Uchiha, Naruto whispered. Kakashi nodded. The councils needed to take action, so they tasked a mission to him. He coughed. You know what happened next? Forced to kill his family. That sucks. But you know what? I think that bastard deserved it. Kakashi smiled sadly. Do you really? Naruto really wanted to. The man killed innocent people and her, his companion of a short time that he grew to love. He couldn't even bring himself to say his puppy's name. I want to, but I can't. It's terrible of the council to force him to do that. No one deserves that. The elder man looked at him with a calculating gaze. Shifting a bit uncomfortably under the man's stare, the whiskered child pondered aloud. So, why did he come back? The group or someone may or may not be after you for unknown reasons. Oh, probably because of the Kyuubi inside me. Right, cause of the Kentucky Naruto, how do you know of that? Naruto then explained to the elder man about him meeting him in the subconscious of his mind. Interesting. Was all the Jounin had to say. Looks like I'll have to inform Kakashi and the village. Naruto shifted awkwardly as the silver-haired man stared off into the space. So where do you fit into all of this? I will be training you. I have to ask one more time. Itachi was forced into the massacre mission. Kakashi nodded. But that doesn't make sense. If he's not the bad guy, Naruto swallowed the lump in his throat and spoke in a small voice. Why would he kill? Naruto trailed off as unbidden memories rushed back. Kakashi sighed. I did not kill your Ninkin. She is still very much alive. Naruto shot him a confused look. Huh? I didn't say you, I said Itachi. Kakashi ignored him. The ropes tied around you functions to cease flow between your tenketsus. That is including everything, from your feet to your legs to your head. This, obviously, I am sure you can infer, includes the eyes. The eyes? Why would that matter? The Sharingan sees through everything, something I will show you now. Kakashi sliced the rope with a simple slash of his kunai. Much like the experience in his mindscape, everything became so clear. Naruto gasped at the clarity around him. Strangely, the upgraded resolution extended to both eyes. Everything was more sharper, but there was no actual change in the settings itself. He turned his gaze to Itachi and… Itachi? What the… Where the hell is Kakashi? The Kakashi you were talking to was a game jutsu. The real Kakashi is setting traps around the perimeter because he is not privy to the information I just told you. He was just talking to me. No, screw that. Prepare to die, you sick. Naruto. As I informed you, Saki-chan is not dead. The horrible experience I set on you was done through Genjutsu, one that was so strong that only Uchihas with active Sharingans and few powerful individuals can break through it. I am sincere when I say this, Naruto. I never wanted to harm you, but that was the only way for things to proceed and I apologize. Itachi lowered his head and bowed. I am sorry, Itato. The Jinchuriki hesitated for a few moments before his face hardened. Where is she then? Give her back first, that's the only way you'll have a chance of earning any type of forgiveness. That is fair. Itachi held out a hand sign and muttered something that Naruto wasn't able to pick up. The Uchiha turned to Naruto and explained, I lifted a Genjutsu in which she was in playing constantly with other puppies. Naruto nodded, satisfied at his explanation, but he offered no verbal response. He wasn't going to say jack diddly squat until he saw his damn. Bark. Several barks were heard from the distance. With each bark, it seemed to be drawing closer to his position. Naruto waited with him passively, but he couldn't help the feeling of desperate hope from welling up from inside of him. He saw his precious companion and cried out with happiness before the little ball of black fur tackled him. After several minutes of happiness and lots of licking, doubt reared its ugly head in Naruto's mind. What if this is still a Genjutsu? This could be a trick too. Naruto, it is not a Genjutsu. This, I assure you. Naruto placed his puppy aside and stood up, and how would I know that? You yourself just said that Uchihas and strong individuals could break free of your Genjutsu. I train hard, but I know I'm nowhere near your level, and I am certainly not an Uchiha. Itachi smiled, do not sell yourself short, Naruto-kun, you are strong. But you are right, your strength does not, yet, compare to mine. The Uchiha let out an amused quirk of the lips as he saw the boy's annoyance. I suppose you're not an Uchiha by birth, but, since, you do possess the clan's Dojutsu, he trailed off. Naruto's mind clicked and he rushed over to the still water. His eyes widened as he focused on his left eye. His Sharingan was blazing. Chapter end. Alright, that's it for today's video, guys. Let me know in the comments section how was the story, and also don't forget to like, share and subscribe. I will meet you in another video. Peace out.